I'm still muted there. See, I did my own problem. It's kind of fun. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jesse, and I'm your virtual adventure guide here today with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. Now, I know we've got a lot of familiar faces in the audience, but if you are new to what we do, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world through like a gazillion live, free, interactive broadcasts. It has been a crazy start to the school year. We're a little over a month in since our first program, and I think we're already at program 60. So it's been a really great time. Thank you all so much for joining us as we continue to showcase and celebrate such amazing people and places around the globe. Now, today we get to deal with a topic that is one of my very favorite things to talk about here on the program, and that is Antarctica. It is literally and figuratively the coolest place that we get to visit and showcase. And so thank you all for being such enthusiastic fans. We had over 60 classes registered from around the world for today's broadcast. So welcome in, and please do let us know where you're joining from in the YouTube chat. Now, a quick housekeeping note, we are going to have a little Kahoot today between the talk and the Q&A. So if you want to open up a separate tab in your computer and type in kahoot.it, input this game pin. I will share this again for you guys, but we're going to have 4 quick questions together to test your understanding, have a little bit of fun between the talk and the Q&A. So feel free to get that up, and I will share that on the YouTube chat in a minute as well. Now, before we dive in, I just want to note this is part of a 4-part epic series. So we are joining with the CIRES team. We're going to learn who they are in just a second for this McMurdo series of broadcasts. Last week, Joe hosted one on October 11th. That is on our YouTube channel. You can check it out now. Today, of course, we're diving in with seasons in Antarctica, and our next 2 programs are November 8th and 15th. So please do sign up for camera spots. We'd love to see you there. Now, before we dive in with our speaker, I'm going to turn it over to Daniela Pennycook, who's going to tell us a little bit about how the series came together, the amazing organization behind it. So Daniela, thank you so much for joining us today, and take us away.
Hi, Jesse. Thanks for having me on today. It's so nice to be here with everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Daniela Pennycook. I am the program integrator here at CIRES. We are the Cooperative Institute for Research and Environmental Sciences, and we are the largest NOAA partner here in the United States. We're based out of CU Boulder, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Association. We work really closely with them to communicate science to the public and bring programs like this to everybody. So you're joining us today through our Science Show and Share program. Ian Geraghty is going to take it away here talking about his work in Antarctica. He's an atmospheric scientist and a PhD candidate with Dr. Sing-Sao Chu's LIDAR research group. They're studying heavy metals in the upper atmosphere, and they're doing it using lasers. So today, Ian's going to tell us a little bit more about why they're doing this in Antarctica, what life is like down there, we're going to talk about seasons in Antarctica, and he's going to let us know a little bit more about what that research is like. So Ian, I'm turning it to you. Thank you so much for having us here today. Again, Jesse, we're so excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Danielle, and welcome in. Ian, so excited to dive in and learn from you.
Hey, everybody.
Awesome, man. So if you want to bring up your screen share, we'd love to dive in with the presentation. I know we've got a lot of stuff to cover today, so feel free to get that all up, and we will dive in.
Let's see. How does that look?
That looks fantastic, man. Go for it.
All right. So can you hear me all right, Jesse?
Oh, yeah, you're perfect.
All right. I will just dive right in then. Hi, everybody. My name is Ian Geraghty, and I'm really happy to be here talking with you today about Antarctica, in particular the seasons, which are a really special part about living and working in Antarctica. So just a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go over what kind of research we do in Antarctica and where. We're going to talk about what causes the seasons, so a little lesson plan, and that really has to do with how the Earth orbits around the sun. And then we're going to look a little more at the seasons at McMurdo Station in Antarctica specifically. And finally, take any questions you guys have about working and living in Antarctica. So, as I said, my name's Ian Geraghty, and I'm a graduate student at CU Boulder. And I've actually spent quite a bit of time at McMurdo Station in Antarctica. I've gone there twice now. The second trip, I stayed there for 14 months in total. So I was there for a whole year. And I really got to be familiar with the place and experience all the different seasons. And it was just one of the coolest things I've ever done. And I'm really excited. I'm going to be going back in December again to McMurdo for a couple months. But just to give you a little overview of where McMurdo is at. So McMurdo is right here. It's in a region called the Ross Sea. And it's actually, this is a big ice shelf, which is just ice flowing off of the continent of Antarctica and floating on the water. And McMurdo Station, a picture shown here, is located on this little island right on the edge of the Ross ice shelf. So it's really pretty. We're right on the water, and it's actually the biggest station in Antarctica. There's actually a lot of different stations in Antarctica, ran by all sorts of different countries. McMurdo is the largest one. As you can see here, it's pretty much like a whole town. And here in this town, we have, dormitories and a power plant and science labs and a big cafeteria where we go eat. So it really is like its whole own little town. And what I do down at McMurdo is LIDAR studies of the atmosphere. And basically LIDAR is a technology that's used in a lot of different applications. The idea is that if you shoot a laser at something and wait for the laser to bounce back to you, you can really accurately measure how far away that object is from you. But we do it a little differently. We take these really high-powered lasers and we shoot them up into the sky. And as it's going up through the atmosphere, it's going to run into little bits of air molecules and all sorts of dust and particulate up in the atmosphere. And a little bit of light bounces back. And we actually collect that light. And by measuring that little bit of light that comes back, we can measure the temperature and even the winds in the upper atmosphere. And by upper atmosphere, I mean like above where planes fly all the way up to the edge of space, which is about 60 miles over our heads at any time. And it's really pretty. At night, you can see the laser beam going right out of the roof of our lab. And we've actually been doing this down at McMurdo for over 10 years now. So it's really exciting because now we have enough data that we can really start to study how the upper atmosphere is changing over long terms. But it's really pretty on the outside. Over on the left, you can kind of see what it looks like on the inside. It's really a whole mess of lasers and lenses and mirrors and computers and wires everywhere. It's a lot of equipment and a lot of really complicated equipment that goes into letting us make these measurements. So when I go down to Antarctica, mostly my job is to make sure that all the instruments are running properly and fixing anything when it breaks. And then also, being there at the lab to actually run these instruments and take the data. So now that we gave you a little overview, I really wanted to talk about what causes the seasons and specifically why are they so different in Antarctica. So the short answer is that the seasons are caused by the tilt of the Earth. So the Earth goes around the sun once a year, and then the Earth spins on its axis once every 24 hours. But Earth's spin axis is kind of tilted over about by 23.5 degrees. And because of that, some parts of the Earth get more daylight and sunlight than others during the year. So kind of as an example, if you look over here on the left, during June, the North Pole is tilted towards the sun. So in the Northern Hemisphere, like myself in Boulder, in June, we have longer days and we're getting a lot more direct sunlight from the sun and we have warmer temperatures, hence it's summer. But if you look on the other side of the Earth, in the South Pole is actually tilted away from the sun. So it's mostly in the shadow and you have very short days and colder temperatures. So we're just going to take a little closer look at this. As I said, in June, the North Pole is actually tilted about 23 degrees directly towards the sun. So the Northern Hemisphere is getting a lot of sunlight. It's really warm, but on the Southern Hemisphere, the South Pole is pointed away from the sun and we're mostly going to be blocked by the Earth itself. And the Southern Hemisphere doesn't get as much sunlight, so it's cold and it's winter there. That's why we have the flip of the seasons between the northern and southern hemispheres. But as the Earth moves around the sun, so going from June to September, really the North Pole isn't tilted. Every day the North Pole kind of tilts a little bit away from the sun until a point in September where really neither hemisphere, the North Pole or the South Pole, neither of them are tilted toward the sun. So that's like our fall and spring seasons. And then as we keep going further into December, we see that actually now the South Pole is pointed towards the sun. So the southern hemisphere of the Earth is going to get more sunlight. We're going to have longer days. We're going to have warmer temperatures, while the northern hemisphere, it's darker, not as much sunlight, and it's going to be colder in winter. And then this is our seasonal cycle. But the seasons are a little different in the Arctic and Antarctic. So I wanted to let you guys know we have these things that we call the Arctic and the Antarctic Circle shown in these pictures. And actually, they're the same size. It looks like the Arctic Circle is much larger than the Antarctic Circle, but they're the same size. And this is what we call the edge of the polar regions. So anything inside of this circle is the polar regions. And we define that as the polar regions because inside these circles, there's a day, at least one day in the summer where the sun never goes down. And then there's one day in the winter where the sun never comes up above the horizon. And maybe not surprisingly, we can figure out exactly where those Arctic and Antarctic circles are by the Earth's tilt. And that ends up being at 66.5 degrees north latitude or south latitude. So now let's take another look at what that looks like throughout the year, but focus maybe a little more on what's going on in Antarctica. So in June, for me up here in Boulder, I'm actually tilted towards the sun and I'm getting a lot more extra sunlight. My days are longer and the temperatures are warmer. But if you look down in the southern hemisphere, if this was me at McMurdo, which is at 76 degrees south, so in the Antarctic Circle, we actually see that the entire Antarctic Circle is out of the direct sunlight, and it's actually going to be dark for most of the winter there. And same thing, like I showed on the previous slides, as we move around the sun, the north pole kind of starts tilting away from the sun until in mid-September, when the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere both get the same amount of sunlight. And then spring or fall. And as we keep going into December, so more like kind of the time of year now, we'll see that our days are actually getting shorter in the northern hemisphere because most of the south pole of the Earth is tilted towards the sun. And then because the South Pole is tilted towards the sun, we see down here at McMurdo that the sun's never going to go down. And really, this is the big point that I wanted to convey to you guys, is that the seasons are caused by the tilt of the Earth. And because of that, the farther north, the closer to the North Pole or the closer to the South Pole you go, you're actually going to have a longer winter where the sun never comes up, or a longer summer where the sun never goes down. So the farther into the polar regions you go, the longer your winter and summers are. And that's why it's maybe a little more different than what we experience like here in Boulder. So now I wanted to go through and show you guys some photos that I took while I was living at McMurdo for a year and kind of just give you my favorite parts. So in the summer, the sun doesn't go down for 4 whole months. We have daylight throughout the whole day for 4 months. And like I said, McMurdo is one of the biggest stations in Antarctica. So there's tons of people there in the summer. There's over 1,000 people living there and working on station. And there's tons of science work going on. Everything from like our kind of atmospheric studies with LIDARs to people studying penguins and seals and collecting meteorites. And there's all sorts of really cool work going on. Also in the summer, we have lots of flights bringing people and supplies in. And the flights themselves are really cool because we take these military cargo planes, typically from New Zealand. We fly them down to McMurdo and we actually land right on the ice, that Ross ice shelf that I was talking about earlier. But the flights can't bring all of the supplies in. So we also have a Coast Guard ship called an icebreaker, which is specifically built for breaking through that sea ice that forms around the station. And that comes in and breaks a path for a big supply vessel to come and, drop us off more food and supplies and stuff we need to live down there. But I'd say in the summer, actually at McMurdo, the temperature doesn't get too cold. It's mostly below freezing still, but we have some really, really nice sunny days still. Of course, we have sunny days because the sun never goes down. And my favorite thing to do during the summer was to hike around McMurdo. There's lots of stuff we can do. We have like a library and lounges and community events, like we play softball and stuff. So there's lots of stuff to do and keep you occupied while you're down there, living in one of the most isolated parts of the world. And I actually wanted to show you guys this photo down here. I told you guys McMurdo is on an island, but it's actually a volcanic island too. So this big mountain behind my friend here is called Mount Erebus. And that's an actual active volcano that we can always see smoke coming out of the top of it. And that's just right by McMurdo. So in the summer, there's lots of opportunities to go walk around and explore and see a little bit of Antarctica. And the best part about that is definitely, for me, the wildlife. So in the summer, there's lots of wildlife around McMurdo, starting with these Adelie penguins, which are kind of shorter and chubbier kind of penguins. We also have the classic emperor penguins, which are so cool. This photo here is of a pretty young one that ran into us while we were running around on the ice sheet. And we also have lots of seals. These Weddell seals are all over the place, and they're really inquisitive and curious creatures. And it's very cool to watch these animals act. They're so well adapted to living in this inhospitable environment in Antarctica. And it's really, really cool to see these guys. Going into the fall and spring seasons. So most of the science work at McMurdo and most of the people are there during the summer. So in the fall and spring is typically when you have people leaving station before the winter or arriving to the station before the summer. And our fall and spring is pretty short. It's only about 2 months each, where we have a more typical like day and night cycle, where we have the sun above the horizon for part of the day and the sun under the horizon for part of the day. But my favorite part about the fall and spring there was definitely seeing these really, really pretty sunsets all the time. And actually this picture on the right is kind of cool. I showed you that photo of the plane, but you can see these little lights down here. That is our runway. That is where the planes land on the ice. But I definitely have to admit that the winter at McMurdo was my favorite part of my time there. It's really dark for 4 months. The sun never comes up. And there's not very many people living on the station, usually less than about 200 people. And it's really cold. It can get down to negative 70 degrees and windy. And sometimes we have really bad storms there. But it's amazing for stargazing. You can see the Milky Way really clearly. You can even see individual satellites flying through the sky. But you also have these beautiful auroras. And you can kind of see that. These are both pictures I took from our LIDAR lab. Sometimes the auroras are green and sometimes they're purple. Sometimes they're even red. And it's a really, really pretty and amazing thing to watch. And I think actually one of the next lectures one of my colleagues is going to, talk a little bit about why we get auroras and focus on that. So with that, I think I will have Jesse, play a video from McMurdo that I took for you guys of the auroras.
And I won't even hold you calling me Joe against you. That's how good it is. This is a fantastic video, honestly. So, and one thing that's kind of neat about this too, a lot of our students might be familiar with the name Aurora Borealis, which is only the northern light. In the south, Ian, what are they called down there?
In the south, they're called the Aurora Australis. So yeah, great point, Jesse.
I mean, they're just so extraordinary. Scientific detachment just goes right out the window when there's something like this because it's so magnificent. I hope our students get the chance in their lives to go and see something like this. In Canada, it's one of actually the best places in the world to see them up in Yellowknife, Whitehorse sort of area in the territories. But what an extraordinary image. Oh, very cool. Thanks, Ian.
Let's see. Do I need to stop sharing so you can show the video?
Oh, yes. If we're done that, there, you're perfect. I can end the screen share, and I'll just say a huge thank you for all of that and giving us a little quick and exciting tour of all the stuff you get to do down there, summer and winter. And again, highlighting the differences in seasons is a really special opportunity in today's broadcast. So what we're going to do now is dive in with that Kahoot that I promised. So if anyone wants to join in, our pin is 704-3827. Ian, what you can do is help us with hints when there's a few seconds to go. And for students that might not be aware, the faster you answer in Kahoot, the more points you get. Now, you don't win anything, but you do win Ian and I's everlasting respect. And so I wish you all the best. We're going to dive in just a second. We got all our people pouring in here, so thank you all so much for our audience for joining in. And if you don't want to play Kahoot, you just want to answer the questions at home, that is totally fine as well. But we are going to get underway. And then I look forward to your questions. We'd love to hear from you. YouTube chat, let us know where you're joining from. Live classes, I'll come to you guys in just a second. But Ian, let's do this thing, man, and dive in with our first question. So exciting. All right, folks. And here we go. How much is the tilt of Earth's axis? So Ian was very explicit about this. We had a whole slide about it. Let's see who is paying attention. 0 degrees, 10 degrees, 45 degrees, or 23.5 degrees. Also, the Earth is not that close to the sun. That would end very badly for us if we were that close as in the picture. What do we got? 52 answers so far. There's so many of you. I think you guys probably are on the ball with this one. Let's see. Most of you got this right. Way to go, 23.5 degrees, and that accounts for the fact that we have that Arctic and Antarctic circle at the 66.5. So let's see who's our leader right now. Purple Crab takes our lead with tropical deer right behind. Way to go. We'll head to question 2. If it's December and you're somewhere where the sun never goes down, are you in the Antarctic or Arctic circle? Ooh, we're going to have people... Okay, orient yourselves. I know we're all in the Northern Hemisphere right now, all our students today. Think you're in the Southern Hemisphere. It's December. Oh, it's October right now. What's going on? Ian, go ahead.
In December, what season is it in the Northern Hemisphere?
It's winter. So what's it down there? And so most of you got this wrong, but the 20 of you got this right. This is a tricky one. This is an interestingly worded one. I like it. So who got it right? Is Purple Crab still have our lead? No, Sturdy Hamster takes our lead. Way to go. Okay. Third question. I'll give Ian longer to give hints this time. What time of year does the team collect the best LIDAR data? When did you see the cool laser going up into space in the pictures? That might be your guide.
Yeah, and I probably didn't talk about this enough, but think about when is it easier to see the stars? When it's light or dark out?
So in the middle of the summer when it's light all day long for 24 hours might not be the best. Let's see what our audience thought. So a pretty even mix between summer and winter. We split them again, Ian. Winter's our correct answer. Again, when you have that perpetual darkness that allows you to do that research in a better way and get the most metal photographs of all time. Adorable ant, our whole leaderboard just mixed up there. Okay, adorable ants in our lead with our final question. So with regard to seasons in the Antarctic, we didn't talk about this too much, but I want to see what you guys think. How much extra sea ice around Antarctica forms in the winter? So when it gets much colder there to the -70 that Ian was talking about, there's no extra ice? Is it 10% more, like a little extra? Is it grow by half again, or nearly 10 times as much? Sounds outlandish and ridiculous. One more second, get those answers in. So the answer is 10 times as much. If you look at the British Antarctic Survey and talk about the lowest extent of sea ice versus the highest, there is 10 times more sea ice in the winter, which is ridiculous. I'm in Newfoundland, and I hear that the winters here get to be like that. It's going to be my first winter soon, so we'll find out. Legend Raccoon is our bronze medalist. Let us know who you are in the chat, by the way. Focus Turtle, number 2. And number 1, our winner of our Kahoot, way to go, is Adorable Ant. It was a crazy Kahoot. We had the leaderboard shift a whole bunch of times. It kept us on our toes. I'm very excited. All right. Ian, we're going to dive in with questions, man. So YouTubers, please feel free to share in the chat. Let's start off with Foster's Fabulous Sixes. Welcome in, guys. I'm going to bring you guys into the broadcast in just a second in Holland Landing. And take us away, folks.
Hi.
Hi.
What temperature is the hottest in Antarctica, and what's the hottest month?
Ooh, hottest month and hottest temperature.
Very good question. So, December is the middle of the summer in Antarctica. So that's typically when it gets the hottest. But usually it doesn't really get above freezing. And that's good because there's a lot of ice in Antarctica and we really don't want it to melt. That would be bad. And that's kind of happening as a result of climate change. But I'd say the hottest temperatures is sometimes we do get heat waves, and actually a whole lot of Antarctica will be at temperatures above freezing. And we're starting to see that happen more often now, actually.
When you were there, what was the hottest temperature you experienced? Was it ever? So, I mean, we've got Americans and Canadians here, so we've got the Celsius Fahrenheit thing going on, but it got above 0 Celsius and above 32 Fahrenheit while you were there, or was it always above freezing?
Absolutely, it got above freezing. There were a couple days where I was walking around in t-shirts and shorts. Well, maybe 50 degrees.
Okay, 10 Celsius, very good.
Yeah.
Let's head to our friends next at the Crest Academy. Welcome in, Ms. Bass O'Brien. Joining us in Salida, Colorado. Unmute your mic, guys. You're good to go. Hey.
Hey, guys.
Okay, what is the hottest it got in winter?
Yes.
Ooh, another really good question. It's always below freezing in the winter. At least the year that I spent there, it was anytime you went outside, you'd really want to put on all of your clothes, just about every bit of clothing you had. You know, those really big red jackets they give us do a super good job at keeping us warm. I would guess that the hottest temperature it got during the winter was probably just about freezing, 0 degrees. I don't think it really ever got much warmer than that.
Well, and I love, too, that you mentioned walking around in a t-shirt. So one of my very favorite things in reading the books of the original Antarctic explorers was it was so cold in the winters there. It was -50 and stuff that when it got to be -25, they were stripping down and taking off all their coats because you get acclimatized to the temperature. And I find that such a fascinating thing that no matter where you are on this planet, you slowly but surely get used to this. I went to California once. It was 25 degrees Celsius or 75 Fahrenheit, and all the San Diego people had coats on, and I was a Canadian from Toronto, and I was walking around with shorts and a tiny t-shirt and wanted to go shirtless. So I love this distinction as sort of you travel around the globe, you get to experience these different places, and you've had such great experiences there.
And it is crazy how fast your body gets used to that. Absolutely.
Ian, let's head to the Merrifield team in Falmouth, Maine. Come on in, guys, and take us away. Miss Jen, I'll come to you in 2 quick seconds. The button shifted there. So Merrifield first, Madam Jen next.
Hi, my name is Addison. Have you ever seen any animals in danger because of global warming?
Ooh, good question.
Ooh, very good question.
Just stay right there.
Let's see, in danger. I think there's a lot of really good science out there that's showing that as temperatures are warming up and we're not getting as much sea ice around Antarctica or around the Arctic, that these animals are having to travel to places that they don't typically live at to find new places to hunt for food. This is really the case with polar bears. They're having to move to places where we've never really seen polar bears before because they're wandering away from where they typically live to go look for food. And because a lot of that's happening because the ice is melting, and that's kind of their hunting habitat. So yes, I would say maybe I haven't seen it myself with my own eyes, but there's a lot of science out there that is showing us how ecosystems and different animal species are trying to adapt to warming temperatures and less sea ice around Antarctica and the Arctic.
Ian, it's a thoughtful answer, and I really appreciate that. And again, with individual species, it can be hard sometimes to see how something's impacting it, and there can be ways that it impacts it that you never would have expected. So one of the things we're seeing in the Arctic, for instance, is that orcas, killer whales, are moving into habitats they previously did not go in. Orcas are the top predators in the entire ocean. So whale species that previously didn't have to worry about orcas now do, because the orcas are getting into places that they wouldn't normally be seen. So again, the situation might be a little different in Antarctica, but around the poles of this planet, we're really seeing a huge difference in the ecosystems there. And so I'm really glad we got that question. Thanks, Miss Merrifield's class. Madam Jen joining us in Sudbury. If you guys want to come on in, you're good to go. Hey.
Hi. So just two little questions. One is, what was the coldest temperature that you had while you were there? And also, what's your favorite view?
Ooh, very good question.
No pressure.
I think the coldest temperature I experienced was probably about negative 80 degrees Fahrenheit.
Whoa.
And that was also with the wind chill when it's really, really windy, because you also have like almost hurricane force winds there sometimes when it's stormy. So it can get really, really cold when those winds kick up.
Ridiculous. No, there's no, I mean, this is the thing with Antarctica, that there's no basis of comparison that any one of our classes has ever had to this. Maybe there's parts of mountain regions of Canada and the US that get to negative 40, but negative 80 is just the next level. That's something that you only experience near the poles. And Ian, this is an impossible question, but do you have a favorite view? Is there a place that really jumps out to you?
Ooh, I think my favorite view is probably some of those pictures that I showed earlier of our LIDAR lab, because it's kind of situated on this hill above the rest of the station. And because you're away from the station, in the winter at least, you know, you're not seeing all of those lights, and it's really, really, really dark out there. So you can just, the views of the Milky Way and all the stars and the auroras are amazing up there. And I spent tons of my time standing outside in the negative 80 degrees, kind of miserable, just trying to watch that and experience that.
That's a great blending of the two questions together. Like, you know a view is extraordinary when you're willing to give, withstand negative 80 and just stand it there shivering just to take it in. I hope our classes, a lot of our students today are coming from big cities. Take the chance, go 20 minutes outside of town to see what the stars look like out there. And it's such a different, almost magical experience. And Ian, thank you so much for sharing all that today. Miss Edie's class, welcome in the chat. I know you're having real trouble getting into the broadcast with us, but they're joining us today in Asheville, North Carolina, one of our favorite cities here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And they want to know, the 5th grade global explorers there want to know, how much plant life can the Antarctic sustain? Good question.
Wow, really good question. There's actually no plant life, really. Maybe like little bits of moss and lichen somewhere. In the parts of Antarctica that are not as far south, like kind of over below the tip of South America, the edge of the Antarctic Peninsula kind of reaches up a little far north than the rest of the continent. And there you certainly will have more plant life. But at McMurdo, for instance, where I was, there really isn't any plant life. It's so cold.
No palm trees in the peninsula, eh? I have two quick addenda to this. One is that one of my very favorite things I've ever learned in my lifetime of science exploration and sort of discovery is if you crack open rocks in the dry valleys of Antarctica, you open them up and there are lichen inside. So lichen are a mix between a plant and a fungi. They're a really hardy form of life. We've even taken them to space and they live there. But that's like the only example of some sort of plant life that you can find. But that's how amazing, that's how much life wants to find a way, is that you can crack open rocks in the middle of negative 70 in an Antarctic area with no wind, water, rain, anything, and you have life there, which is amazing. And Antarctica used to be really lush, so it's really cold now. We think of it as this place with a mile deep of ice. There are dinosaur fossils. There are fossils of rainforests on Antarctica. And actually, I mean, we don't want the ice to melt, but as the ice is melting, more and more fossil discovery sites are being opened up in the Antarctic Peninsula especially. So we're finding really, really cool fossils down there as well. Great question, guys. Ian, I'm going to head to YouTube for a couple, and then we'll head back to our live classes for a whole other round. Thanks to Daniela for answering things in the chat as well. Cynthia, Mr. Pui's class joining us, wants to know, how many animals do you usually see there? You shared a bunch of pictures of them, but is there anything that really stands out?
Ooh, yeah. So the ice around the station is there for most of the year, and pretty much any given day you can go out and see tons of seals lounging out on the ice and sunbathing, and that's really cool. They almost look like just little black blobs really out there, but every once in a while they get closer to the station.
Yeah, awesome, man. Chad wants to know, does Antarctica get large storms when you're down there? Are you blasted by hurricanes, tornadoes, sharknadoes, anything of the sort?
So not exactly hurricanes, but absolutely. We get some really bad storms in the winter. And of course, in the winter, those winds kick up and it gets extra, extra cold. But yeah, it'll get so windy that it'll almost blow you off your feet. And actually, we have these codes when you're on station for when, if the weather's too bad outside, they will just tell you to stay in your buildings. You're not allowed to go outside because the wind will kick up so much snow and ice that you won't be able to see from one building to the other. And they're afraid you'll get lost. So we just hunker down to be safe.
I've often seen, we've had a lot of Arctic researchers too. We've had ships locked in the Arctic ice. We've had Antarctic researchers done before, and they'll make a line, like a lead that you follow in the dark so you don't get lost because it's a flat, featureless terrain. When you've gone out at night in the winter especially, do you have to follow a lead? Like, is there a rope you go on, or are you using lights in the ice, or how are you getting around?
We do absolutely have those ropes as a safety precaution if you did have to go outside in bad weather for an emergency or something. Yep. Typically at night in the long winter, the starlight is enough for you to see around, so you don't have to follow the ropes all the time. But we have them just in case.
Yeah, but that's so amazing. Like, what a great way of describing it. That literally, like, the sky is so bright with the Milky Way, with all the stars that you can see, that you can walk around in the featureless ice. Very cool. One more from YouTube, and then we're going to go right back to our live groups. MK wants to know, can you please tell us about some exciting research being done in Antarctica or new findings when you've been down there? What's the latest cutting edge stuff?
Ooh, what's the latest in Antarctica research? I'd say I'm going to defer away from our own LIDAR project and talk about something else for just a minute, because I think it's so cool. But we have really, really good instruments on satellites now that can measure how much ice is being lost in Antarctica over the whole continent. And we can make these measurements really well. So we have really good science showing us that the East Antarctica is losing a ton of ice, and the ice loss is kind of increasing in rate as things are getting warmer, the atmosphere is getting warmer, and the oceans are getting warmer. So we can see that the ice loss is kind of related to those warmer temperatures. And I just think it's really cool that we have satellites that can show us like a picture of all of Antarctica and where we're losing ice, where we're gaining a little bit of ice. But overall, it's definitely we're losing ice.
I'm really glad. And I mean, for our students, kids these days have grown up with climate change as just part of their lexicon. That's something that we all sort of have grown up with, sort of understanding, recognizing. But that knowledge comes from science like this, where we are assessing entire continents, huge regions with satellites, with on-the-ground data. And I'm really glad you've taken the time to talk about that a little today. Ian, let's go back to our live classes. We might go a little over time, a couple minutes, because we're rebels together, but we'll head to Foster's Fabulous Sixes once again. Come on back in, guys. Hey. Oh. Yes, you are on camera. What's your question, guys?
We don't have Okay.
No questions? You just wanted to say hi?
No, we have one. I have a question.
What's your question?
My question is, what was your favorite food that you ate?
Favorite food that you're eating down there? Ian, any steak tartare or lobster tails?
So that's a really good point. I didn't talk about the food there, but because all of our supplies come on planes, we really don't get that many fresh vegetables or fruits, except when a flight comes in and brings us some. So lots of flights come in the summer when there's lots of people there. But in the winter, we might only have one flight a month come to McMurdo. So that means you're eating maybe only one salad or having an apple for a couple days out of the month. And when you haven't had a salad for a while, those salads are really, really good. And that's my favorite food.
So this is our takeaway message for all you students. If you go home tonight and you're served Brussels sprouts, and you're like, ugh, just think that Antarctic scientists go down there and they're like desperate for that plane to land so they can run and mob it to get the salads out. That's
exactly.
Let's head to our Crest Academy folks. Come on back in, guys. Unmute your mic. And if you have another question for us, hey, yes, come on down. There you are.
Kayla's coming up to ask a question.
Come over. There we
Hello.
are. Hi.
I have a question for you. What was the longest period of time you had without sunlight, and what was it like?
Yeah. Great question.
Great question. So in the winter at McMurdo, the sun didn't come up for a whole 4 months. So pretty much from April to August, it was completely dark. And that's a really, really weird thing, as you can imagine. It kind of messes up your sleep cycle. And yeah, it can be kind of sad not seeing the sun for that long. But it's not all that sad because you really get these amazing views of the Milky Way and the aurora, like that video we watched. And that 100% makes up for it. But the winter is a weird time in McMurdo. There's not a whole lot of people. It's dark and you're very isolated. And yeah, some people like it and some people don't.
I love how optimistic a guy you are. You're so grateful for the experience of going to Antarctica. And again, it's such a special experience on this planet. So few people, all things considered, have ever been down there or spent near the time that you have. And that really shines through. So I really appreciate that, Ian. Let's take our final 3 questions. Miss Edie's 5th grade global explorers in our chat want to know, what type of gear do you wear outside? So, I mean, it's -80. You're frozen. You're wanting to look at the laser and the northern lights. What are you wearing?
All right. That's a great question. So in those cases, I would pretty much put on every bit of clothing I had. So long underwear, sweatpants, then snow pants. And the big thing is really our red jackets. And everyone that goes down to McMurdo is given a red jacket before they go. And these are big Canada Goose parkas that are filled with real goose down. And they're so warm and they're so good at keeping us warm that it actually does make it manageable to go outside and enjoy yourself when it's almost -80 degrees outside.
Canada Goose could just take that whole clip you just did and use it as a promotional ad. We can talk about that in the future. Fantastic. Let's head to Madam Jen's class. If you guys have one, come on in and we'll wrap up with this Merrifield's team in just a second. Hey.
So what or who is the youngest person that's ever been to Antarctic or like to McMurdo Station or whatnot?
Oh, great question. I'd say the youngest people that have gone to McMurdo have probably been around 18, maybe like 18-ish. I was 21 when I first time I went. But yeah, sometimes people right out of high school come down.
See, if I'd known that was an option when I came out of high school, I would have applied. But the students, I know we've got a lot of grade 6s today. In 6 years, just think about this. You can put in an application. We'll find out from Ian and Daniela how to do this. And maybe you could be the first and youngest person to go to Antarctica.
Yeah, we'll get you down there.
Very cool. Follow with me, Miss Merrifield's class. Wrap us up with one more question, and then we'll make sure that you guys all have the resources you need to learn more and keep the excitement going with our rest of our series and some things you can do after this broadcast. But Miss Merrifield, come on in. Hey, guys.
Hi. My name's Susie. I'm Calvin. And our question is, how do you sleep when you're there?
And has any of your equipment ever fallen under the ice?
Yeah, great question, guys.
So sleeping is a little hard. As you can imagine, if the sun's up for 24 hours of the day, it's kind of hard to tell when you're supposed to go to sleep. It's not really supernatural, but they help us out with that a little bit by making sure all the dorms that we live in, where everyone on station lives, have really nice blackout curtains. So you can still make your bedroom really, really dark. I never had that much problem with sleep, but I certainly know a lot of people have had their sleep cycle messed up a bit because of the constant sunlight or the constant darkness.
Yeah. And then any of your gear falling beneath the ice? Is this something that even can happen where you are in McMurdo?
So thankfully, like I said, McMurdo is on a little island kind of surrounded by ice. So our lab and our instruments are on the island, and we don't have to worry about them falling through the ice. But that being said, we certainly have equipment failures and stuff go wrong all the time. So a big part of my job is to make sure that when something breaks, we can fix it and that we have a spare part on hand maybe. And that's really a ton of my job when I'm down there. I'm sure there have been researchers down there that have lost stuff in the ice, but
the 18-year-olds, they don't bring them back anymore because of that. Ian, this has been such a spectacular presentation. I'm going to ask you one last question in just a minute, but I want to make sure that all our classes know, again, check out cires.colorado.edu. They do amazing outreach work at the link below. I'll make sure all our classes have that, and specifically the Science Show Share program. Say that 5 times fast. It's very fun. If you guys want to join us for the rest of this series, we've got 2 more programs on the McMurdo subsite below on November 8th and 15th. And of course, our last one is on our YouTube channel too from October 11th, A Day in the Life at McMurdo. Ian, is there a final message before we bring in our classes to say a big thank you and goodbye? Is there something that you want all our kids to leave with about your experience in Antarctica or about seasons down there?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to tell you guys that when I was your age, I didn't really know that it was possible to even go to Antarctica. And I want you guys to know that it is possible, whether you're doing research or you want to go down there and cook food for everybody or work as an electrician or a plumber. There's so many jobs down in Antarctica, and it really is an amazing and cool place to go see for yourself.
Ian, that is spectacular. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it so much. I can't wait to hear how the journey goes when you get the chance to go down for December. And now what we do to end every broadcast is I'm going to bring in all our teacher friends to say a big thank you and farewell. So, Madam Jen, our Merrifield team, Crest Academy, and Foster Side of the Sixers. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.